What's up, everybody? Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by Austinite Johnny Goudie. Johnny has been in the Austin music scene for decades and multiple bands. He's got his own podcast called How Did I Get Here? He's been doing that for 13 years. He's got more than 1,400 episodes. Numerous bands over the years. He caught the attention at one time of Lars Ulrich from Metallica, who was interested in signing his band and actually did sign his band. And so Johnny's got this really unique perspective of having worked with Lars and spent some time at his house, spent a lot of time talking to him and trying to make this band work. And that alone is really interesting. But
a lot of people don't realize Lars had for a short time, he had his own record label that was a subsidiary of Elektra Records, of course. This would have been pre-Blackened Records, which is basically a supreme vanity label, but it's Metallica has their own, they own their own masters, they own their own catalog and things like that. But so when Elektra, as far as I am to understand it, when Metallica was on Elektra and releasing material solely on Elektra, they gave Lars the reins to this subdivision of Elektra, and they were the first band for him to sign. The Goudie. It was just called Goudie. Yeah.
Yes.
And he talks a lot of
Goudie.
He talks a little bit about the development of the songs and how it all kind of came down. And we'll let Johnny tell you all the stories because it's quite fascinating. And then, he talks a little bit about his growing up and the good, the bad, and the ugly. He mentions throughout, he starts talking about his podcast, which I just can't believe 13 years and over 1,400 episodes. It seems to me is like, I'm not a mathematician. Is that like 100 episodes a year or more?
God, I don't know, but I'm not a mathematician either. That's why we do this show. But he does.
That's a lot, dude.
He puts out 2 episodes a week, and I know
that's a lot.
We put out 1 a week, and it's a lot of work. So putting out 2 a week, there's some differences. He doesn't have a video component and whatever, but there is no doubt about it. I can tell you firsthand, folks, that
it's something that I didn't bring up, but I think for a little while on maybe public access or some kind of local TV, he had a cooking show with AJ Vallejo. And I forgot to bring it up to him. You knew about it too?
Well, now that you say it, and you mentioned AJ Vallejo with now.
I think they had a fucking cooking show for a while. That was probably hilarious.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Johnny's he's an onion. He's got all of this really fun facts about him, and he's really, really easy to talk to, and he just loves art and music. And it was awesome. All I had to do was reach out and get a hold of them to have him on the show. So thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You guys go way back. And I, as a spectator on the sidelines, I'm aware of who Johnny is since the day I got to Austin, which was, 30 years ago. And he was already well established at that point. So he's been a major player in the Austin music scene, regardless of which band he's in. We should rattle off a couple of the band names. He was in Mr. Rocket Baby.
Mm-hmm.
What's the current one? He had Goudie, of course. Mm-hmm. Goudie, by the way, if you're going to go out and look for it on YouTube or whatever, is Goudie. Skyrocket is the other band.
Yeah, Skyrocket is like a 70s AM radio pop cover band, which is really fun. They play parties and they actually tour. So, he probably makes pretty good money doing that. And I bet it's a whole lot of fun. But he still writes and plays and collaborates and records with multiple artists who seem to be our solo artists or just singer-songwriter stuff, which is what Austin flavor, right? And he's really good in his own right. He's a multi-instrumentalist. It doesn't surprise me that he's got a successful podcast that's at least locally award-winning. So check it out. His podcast is, again, called How Did I Get Here? So check that out. And just Google Johnny Goudie, please. He's a great guy. You should learn a little bit about him.
Yeah, just to add a little more, he's done work with written songs and played with a number of the women in the Go-Go's. He's been out on the road with the BoDeans. I think he said he went out with Ian Moore.
That's correct.
So yeah, he's worked with some art, and he did some work with Fastball. We've had Tony Scalzo on the show before. So yeah, Johnny's he's a passionate music fan and a well-versed musician, and as you say, plays multiple instruments and has managed to get a lot of great work with a lot of established people and has established himself in his own right.
The photo montage I want to mention that you'll probably be seeing during this clip here. There's a picture of him with Anvil. There's a picture of him and Einar, his bass player, standing with Lars, of course. There's a picture, I think it's a screenshot of an interview it looks like he did over Zoom with Nancy Wilson from Heart. And there's just a bunch of really cool, it's like I didn't get to ask him, it's like, where'd you run into Anvil? Did you go see Anvil play somewhere? How did you get Nancy Wilson on your show? And I bet he's got this 30-minute long story about how, we were at dinner and they walked in and next thing you know, we're doing shots or whatever. Who knows?
I bet I know how he got the Nancy Wilson thing. I'm just gonna throw a dart here.
Throw your dart of guesstimation.
Johnny is friends with Mark Andes.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
who was
right.
The bass player in Heart
and who's a longtime Austinite.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I bet there's a connection there.
Could be. Yeah. That's a good guess.
Yeah, we ought to hit him up on that.
We need to get Mark Andes on here.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me, we can ask Mark Andes. So how did you tell us the story about how you got Nancy to be on Johnny's show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be, I'm fantasizing again. Take us out. Take us out, Dave.
Yeah. Anyway, a well-versed musician, a passionate music fan, and he's all over the place. He's got a podcast. He's got his bands. He's got his music. We love him. We had a great time with him today. Johnny Goudie on the Talk Louder podcast.
Okay, so I am so excited to be doing this with you guys. Like, I'm a huge fan of both of you. And I'm a huge fan of you guys together, and I'm a huge fan of Talk Louder. I know I've said it before. And hi, Jared, if he's secretly watching us.
Well, he will be because he edits this crap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
or content, as we prefer to call it.
Well, and right. Dave's always going, I'm glad Jason's not our PR person. Yeah. But he also knows it's my vocabulary as well.
Get the hook.
Because there'll be a bag of gold and I'll go, where do I put this crap? No, we're excited to have you. I have been watching you from afar like the whole time. And a fan of yours. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a fan of yours. I mean, I don't own everything you've ever done. I've never listened. I can't listen to 1,400 plus podcasts. And
or bands.
Or bands or songs, and we're gonna probably get into all that. But yeah, I'm a fan, and if you ever think that you don't have any or one. I'm one.
Thank you. That means a lot. Well, I'm also a big fan of yours. I was thinking yesterday. I remembered when we met.
Wow, really?
Do tell.
I do. I distinctly do. It was 1990. I still lived in Houston. I was in this band called Panjandrum, and I don't know if she knew you, but there was a lady that was an A&R person for a publishing company that was called Emerald Forest. Her name was Kathy Waldman, but she kind of came to oversee this recording of a demo that we did for that company. And we rehearsed for a couple of days at the Arc. And I
right.
remember at one point she was like, "Oh, that's the guy from Dangerous Toys." And then she was like, "I'll introduce you to him," and I met you.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then for all those years afterwards, you were so nice. It was 1990. It would have been
90.
like summer of 90.
90. Yeah, we might have been there rehearsing for. Well, obviously, we were rehearsing for something.
Well, I feel like a lot of like our friendship was in the driveway or the entryway of the Ark or the hallway. Like, or the picnic table.
You know, the first time, this is interesting. I'm glad that you brought this up in every way. And I'm sorry that I don't remember the lady.
That's all right.
Kathy's, I don't remember that at all. But
well, I was meeting the singer from Dangerous Toys, and you were meeting some dude from Houston that was rehearsing. You know what I mean?
No,
yeah, pretty much.
That was permission to have no guilt at all. I love it.
No guilt.
I feel like we just took a religion course or something, you know. No guilt, no guilt. True Confessions. That's where I first met Dave. That's where I first met Metal Dave. Was at the Ark. He was the guy showing up with a 12-pack of Budweiser to all the punk rock band rehearsals.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for letting me come into y'all's rehearsal. I brought the beer. Hoorah! You know, that was Metal Dave.
Yes, I spent many hours at the Austin Rehearsal Complex, and as you both probably know, I am not a musician. So I was there because all my friends were in bands, and all my friends at the time were punk rockers, and the punk rockers could only afford like the 11 p.m. slot on Tuesday for rehearsal or whatever it was. So I'd show up with the beer, and we'd stay till however late they could stay or however late the punk rockers could afford. And yeah, I met a lot of people, Johnny, just like you said. A lot of friendships were established in the hallways or the driveway at the old Ark rehearsal complex. And yeah, many fond memories.
We could do a whole show on that.
Actually, Jason, I met you at Zeros in Corpus Christi was the very first time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember that. Was it Scythe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Much like Johnny. So Johnny, a little background. I was living in San Antonio at the time, and all my friends in San Antonio were in metal bands, right? So there was this metal band called Scythe that I was best friends with, and I used to go to all their shows and help them hump gear and all that stuff. And they had a gig in Corpus Christi at this place called Zeros. So I went to the show, helped them load in. I'm standing in the crowd. The band's on stage playing. I'm wearing a black leather jacket with a hand-painted Motorhead logo on the back. And I get this tap on my shoulder in the middle of a song. You know, the place it's screaming loud. I can't hear a thing. And I turn around and there's Jason. And just like you, Johnny, it's like, he goes, "That's a badass jacket." And I'm like, wow. And then, so when the music quiets down, he goes, "Hi, I'm Jason." I was like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." Because I'm thinking to myself, what is the guy from Dangerous Toys doing in this dive in Corpus Christi? And it turned out it was around the Thanksgiving holidays, and Jason was home because his family is from Corpus. He's from Corpus. I didn't know this at the time, but that's how we met. And just like you, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know who you're the guy from Dangerous Toys. I see you on MTV. I'm just some chump hanging out with this metal band."
Yeah. But with a badass jacket.
True.
Yeah, well,
I did have that jacket to my credit. Yeah.
Metal Dave always had a badass jacket. And I can only be friends with people who have badass jackets. So, Johnny, if you went to your closet and turned the camera on your closet, I'd be like, "Yep, we can be friends." I'm sure there's some badass jackets in there.
They're probably a little frillier than.
No, but I mean, hey, if it's frilly,
a huge Elton John fan.
If it's frilly in the right way, like Ronnie Wood could wear it, then I'm down. I'm down.
Yeah. And Jason is a huge Elton John fan, so I'm sure
that's true. Jason, do you dress Eltonish? Not like Elton, but when you do the Captain Fantastic, are you still doing that?
Yeah, I am, and I'm.
Do you wear like crazy glasses or anything?
No, not crazy glasses. I wear these glasses. And I'm playing guitar. So even if I dressed up as, if I put on the Donald Duck costume and waddled out there, I don't know how many people would really know know why I'd be wearing a Donald Duck costume other than about 3 people. But no, I don't dress Elton, and I play guitar while I'm singing, so
Okay.
the Elton costume wouldn't really work. But yeah, I am a huge fan. I like everything. I'm omnivorous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
No, I know that. That's one of the things I love about you. Let's just pick a place. It doesn't have to be from the beginning, but when did you come to Austin?
Well, initially, like, I moved here in 1984
Okay.
with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
and we were living in the Woodlands at the time. I was already playing music, and she was really close friends with this woman named Kathleen Luce, who was married to Mark Hallman at the time in the early 80s.
Okay.
And they were close friends, and I became friends with Mark. And as I wanted to become a musician, he kind of took me under his wing.
Is Mark Hallman the guitar player for Carole King?
He played guitar, but he also produced a couple of records for her, and he played with Dan Fogelberg. He owned the Congress House.
Holy shit. So I have to confess, I read some stuff on your Wikipedia page that put that information together because I didn't know who Mark Hallman was.
Okay, yeah, no,
But
that's weird.
he sounds impressive.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys haven't crossed paths. I mean, he's married to Wayne's sister, Kristen.
Maybe we have, and I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. I could be walking by him going, "Hey, Mark, how's it going?" and not realizing he was in Carole King's band, owned Congress House, and is this bad motherfucker. So, you know,
he's a bad motherfucker.
In Austin, there's just all these bad motherfuckers everywhere. So it's kind of, hey, dude, so you know what I mean?
It's not only the live music capital of the world, it's the bad motherfucker capital of the world.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I like that title better because the live music capital of the world is just a T-shirt slogan to get people to move here.
So how did that connection lead to you coming to Austin then?
Yeah.
Okay, so that connection was my mom was a single mom, and we lived in the Woodlands, and she initially moved to the Woodlands when I was in 4th grade.
In the Woodlands, Houston.
Outside of Houston, yeah. Because we lived in California in Marin County, and she'd been dating some guy, and we lived there with this dude. And then they split up. We moved to Houston. We moved into Montrose, and in Marin County, it was one of those places where you could just leave in the morning and come back at dark, because it was just the woods. You weren't going to get, molested or kidnapped or any shit was going to happen to you. You might get eaten by a bear. Like that's it. That's what's going to happen.
Rural.
So we moved into Houston, into Montrose, and I couldn't go outside of my house except in the backyard. And it was like, it cramped my style. Like I was like an outside running around kid my whole life. And so then my mom, they were building the Woodlands, and we moved up there so that I could have a little bit more of a, be in a place where I could do my own thing as a kid. But then as I got older, when I was like 14, I wanted to play music and all that stuff. And my mom was a single mom, and you can't really, the Woodlands in the 80s wasn't a place for a single lady to meet dudes because everyone there is married. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, she wanted to change the scene. I definitely, I was obsessed with music, you are when you first, just like when you make that choice. I made that choice when I was 13, that this was it. Like this was what I was going to do. And so moving here was a huge thing because I get to be around Mark, and he would be able to teach me stuff and whatever. And so we moved up here after I finished 9th grade. We moved up here in the summer of '84, and then we lived here a little over a year. And then my mom died. She was murdered. I'm sure you read that in the thing as well.
Yeah.
And so then I moved to Miami.
I had known that already, and that shit has been on Dateline and all of the true crime shit, and it was something that I learned long after you and I had met and sort of become pals and well-rehearsed friends. And I didn't know that, and so I've never spoken to you about that. So I learned it all off of the news, if you would, a true crime show, And
it's one of those things that when you go through it, like to bring it up in conversation is a fucking bummer.
Well, it is a bummer.
You're going to kill whatever vibe you're in. Like,
of course,
you're like, oh, I've got something to say, and then you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't say it because then the next hour and a half are lost in this sad thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Understood. Right. And my heart is broken every time I recall that or it's brought up.
Yeah. So I didn't know that at all. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, no, it's all right.
What did you do? What happened at that point? Because that's kind of here's your world. It's moving along fine. And then, it's upside down now. What am I going to do now?
And
you're what?
Well,
14?
it was really,
how old?
No. She was attacked the day before my 17th birthday. So I was like essentially 17 when she died.
Okay.
So, we had moved here, and Mark had totally taken me under his wing as thought would happen. And then I ended up playing with him. Like I started playing with him that summer before my mom died, which was unbelievable. I was like some 16-year-old kid, playing with Michael Ramos and Mark Hallman and all these dudes. And it was unbelievable. And I was kind of like living the dream. And then my mom died, and I had to move to Miami and live with my dad, who was who put me like in an all boys Catholic school to straighten me out.
Wow.
That didn't take very well.
I was going to say.
So I went there for the rest of that year. And then I ended up, what's that?
I was going to say that didn't work, obviously.
That sounds like the opposite of what should have happened, because if you were going to be taught how to rebel, that was the school.
Totally.
Yeah.
My dad didn't understand reverse psychology at all.
That's all right.
So,
most of them don't. Most of them don't. Isn't that weird? Yeah, they don't know.
Yeah. So after that, after I finished that year of school, I had to go to summer school, and we lived close to Miami Beach. So I ended up going to Miami Beach Senior High School.
Wow.
And at the end, towards the end of that summer session, I was like, my dad was like, man, you have all these friends, and you didn't have one friend at the other school. I was like, no, dude, they were a bunch of asshole, like rich kid douchebag, like jerks.
Yeah.
And I was like, if there's any way, like I need to be around people that I can talk to and stuff. And so, he showed some mercy and let me go. So I ended up going to school there, and that's where I met Richard Weiss, who I ended up starting Mr. Rocket Baby with many years later.
All right.
And so I lived there until I finished high school. I moved to Houston and started playing music there.
Wow. And were this is kind of, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is turning into, you moved to Houston and you were 17, 18?
No. I moved to Houston. Yeah, I was like 18. I was almost 19 when I moved there.
So you were like this is parts of this story are like spot on to 90% of me and the people that I know, as far as like 13 years old, you couldn't say I was terrible. You couldn't keep me from playing rock and roll the rest of my life. At that point, it was fuck sports, fuck school, fuck everything else. I just wanted to grow up to be Gene Simmons. So it turned, So you're in Houston, and we can jump off the timeline anytime, but this is going great. You have disposable jobs. What are you doing? Delivering pizza, flipping burgers?
No, when I first moved to Houston, I worked at a Hallmark store with a bunch of ladies that were all 70 and older. And that was amazing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. At a Hallmark store in the mall.
How so? How was that amazing?
Just the surrealness of the whole thing, like being their little whipping boy.
Wow.
Boxes filled with cards and filled with paper are so heavy that I ended up getting a hernia. And dude, check this out. This is amazing. I got laid off, but it was like in between, you have like, okay, so in the greeting card industry, back when the Hallmark stores really meant something, like from October until Valentine's Day. I mean, that shit is nuts, man. You're going holiday to holiday, like taking down the whole window display every month and putting up a new one. It sounds crazy, like Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So I had to put everything from all of the holidays away the day after Valentine's Day.
Oh.
And so one of the manager lady kept on coming up to me and going like, did you already put the last box up there? And I was like, no, not yet. I've got about 5 more. And she come back and like, you put the last one up? Finally, I'm like, yeah, I put the last one up. She's like, all right, we're going to have to let you go. She waited for me to put all the fucking boxes away before she fired me. It was amazing. And then I went to work at Whole Foods, where I ended up working there for 5 years.
That's
and
gangster.
Moving here and working there.
That's gangster of her.
Total gangster.
Yeah.
Total gangster, 75-year-old Hallmark lady.
Right,
it was amazing.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Trippy, man.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like that was I mean, maybe you secretly loved it. I don't know, but I had these not making it be about me. Disposable jobs are what the musician has, so they can just make it to the next dinner or gig or rent or whatever. And it's not. If you're not gonna let me off from my gig this weekend, I quit, because I'll just work at the Taco Bell next door.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So
what was the thing that you guys said in Bobby's interview? The thing you do between jobs? What is it, like the in between playing gigs that he would start doing like tech stuff?
Oh, Bobby Rock.
Bobby Rock. Yeah.
God, I don't know.
Who knows?
I know it's hard to remember your own show, but
in between things, you're in between things.
It's like you're in between things. That's exactly right.
You know who I learned that from? I learned that from Dino Lee.
Yeah.
I learned that from Dino Lee because me and Bobby, both, speaking of Bobby, both worked for Mr. Fabulous for a few years, which is Dino Lee, right? And then, and he would ask me questions about, well, aren't you some kind of hot shot? Don't you got somewhere you need to be? Because I need to schedule some dudes for my gigs coming up next month. And I go, no, I need the money, man, because he paid well. Yeah. And it was just lights and PA and cartage and shit and set up and tear down, And and that was shit. I got that hat with one eye open. So, and Bobby too. And all of our friends, we drug as many people as we could into that gig, and it was fun. And Dino's great because he's just a wild man, But he would call that, oh, I get it. You're just in between things. Yeah. You're waiting for your next publishing check, even though it's only going to be $10,
Yeah.
Or whatever,
So Johnny,
that's what that is. Yeah.
When you set up shop in Austin, so to speak, how long until you're sort of making the rounds and becoming a regular on the club circuit here? Because you've been for a long time.
I was in a band. I was in a band in Houston that before I moved back here, like in '89 and '90, that was called Panjandrum, and it was also with Richard Weiss, who I did Mr. Rocket Baby with. He had moved to Houston, and then we started this kind of like funk band, and it did well. Like we did really, really well. We were touring, and like we sell out Fitzgerald's. We were managed by Fitzgerald's. Do you know that club in Houston? Yeah, that was around. Mm-hmm. They basically started a management company for us, and what they would do is, there was a lot of people doing that then. It seemed like there was a band called Ten Hands in Dallas who was managed by this guy that had something to do with Club Dada. And so they would do like show trades and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So, it was actually cool, and it helped out a lot. And I learned a lot about kind of how the inside, like learning the music business with the management that's inside of a club. So you literally see the spreadsheets at the end of the night. You don't really get to, like, as a musician, nobody sits down and teaches you that shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So learning that shit early on, I kind of understood what my role was in the whole grand scheme of the club at the show at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a certain role you play. So
not everybody in every band knows how to wear that hat either. So they just don't. Oh, I just play bass, or I'm just a drummer, or whatever. And it takes a certain kind of head to even want that job, quote job. When you're in a band, it's part of management. It really is learning how to manage things and keep a cool head and be a bean counter, if you will. Write shit down, yeah.
Or at least just know that there is bean counting. Like, it's not like you show up, play a gig, and like, oh, the club didn't promote the show, I didn't get paid enough, whatever. Like, you get a sense of, like, when someone starts complaining, you're like, well, that's not really what happened here, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys were saying I moved to Austin. That band broke up after that publishing thing kind of went south, and then I wanted to move here, and so Hallman, Mark, let me live at the Congress House.
Wow.
And yeah, so I lived at the Congress House for a couple of years, from like 91 to 93.
How late did the sessions go?
As late as they needed to. There was no.
And you were probably soaking up knowledge.
Oh, totally, 100%.
Yeah.
So 100%. Like, I was living in the record. Yeah, and I mean, there's cool people there. There's, Mark Andes was always there. Grissom was always there.
Yeah.
David Halley made a record there during that time. Ian Matthews was doing a lot of records there. Just a lot of really great music people.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I was 14, we lived in the Woodlands, and we'd come up to visit for like the weekend, and Hallman would take me with him to his gigs. He'd just take me along he had a cover band at the time, and I would go with his brother and a couple of other cool dudes. And all these dudes, like, before the Congress House was a recording studio, it was a rehearsal place. Like, the cutting room was a place where people rehearsed, and maybe someone would bring an 8-track reel to reel and record their demos and stuff there. But it wasn't a fully functioning recording studio. What it was like a flop house for a bunch of musicians. So when I went there when I was 14 years old, and I saw all these dudes wake up at like in the afternoon and like come out and talk about their gig from the night before, having coffee and smoking, I was just like, fuck, this is the life, dude. Like, these guys are living the life. Like, it was amazing. And my dream was to live in the Congress House. I fucking lived there for a couple of years.
Wow.
I mean, there were days where you'd be up like late drinking and then have to go to work at Whole Foods at like, 9 in the morning, and you get home and there's some dude who they decided the amp sounds best in that crevice right outside of your bedroom door. So you're just hearing some dude playing the same fucking guitar solo like for 3 hours. There were those downfalls, but otherwise it was unbelievable. Like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was kind of the answer I was fishing for.
Yeah.
Because it's, you think, oh yeah, I get to live in a recording studio and I'm a young person. But when you feel like shit and you have to hear the same guitar solo for 3 hours, that's torture.
Yeah.
Even if it's Eddie Van Halen, I don't care.
Or there was another aspect is, say perhaps you had a young lady stay over, and they get up and their walk of shame is through the living room with like Mark Hallman and Bradley Kopp and like fucking David Grissom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want some coffee?
You had
or Will Sexton or something.
You need a prenup.
Exactly.
You need to read this before you enter. Yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, there are going to be some grown men childs outside of this door having coffee. They're going to look at you funny and judge you in a way, but just accept it.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, Johnny.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Well, to be 1920, am I right? 1920.
And I was 20. I moved here when I was 20. Yeah, I was 22 when I moved here. 22.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that was in mid 80s?
No. That was the first time I moved here and I was a kid was in the mid 80s. This was 1991.
Okay. 1991. Right on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got here in 95 and I remember, your name was all over the place as far as because I was scouring the Austin Chronicle trying to figure out which gigs I'm going to this weekend or this. I mean, it's Austin, so every night of the week there's something, And I remember seeing you and your bands or something you were affiliated with just seemed to be playing all the time, and you always had you were very well established. And you had good gigs. I mean, you were doing like the Steamboats and you weren't doing all the punk rock hellholes. So
right.
I kind of, without even knowing you or knowing your music, I had this perception that you were one of the more successful bands on the circuit at that time.
Yeah, Johnny's no
Yeah.
dummy. Johnny's no dummy. He made sure that the gigs that he got, they room had a PA in it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to people before a lot. Like there was the guys that wrote the oh God, now I'm drawing a blank. The guys that wrote the book about the indie punk scene that came out here. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do, but I can't remember.
I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book. But it's funny because my thing with like Hole in the Wall versus a lot of other places versus Steamboat was like I was always thinking of showcasing. I was always thinking of getting a record deal. I was just thinking of taking over the world, not just, being a part. I wanted to be part of the scene, but I also wanted to be fucking Bono. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't want to be actually fucking Bono, but I wanted to be Bono.
Right.
So
no, I understood you.
Hey, whatever it takes, right?
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
I remember going to all the different places and seeing Steamboat and going like, holy shit, man, this is like anybody on that stage. Like, anybody looks like my grandma going on that stage looks like a rock star. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has amazing IntelliBeam lights and
right.
This rad sound system. It was like, front room of the Hole in the Wall. I've had some outer body experiences playing music on that stage. But that someone wasn't going to walk in there and see a guy they wanted to give $1 million to be the next guy. You know what I mean?
In your early years, did you build your own light show and put on shows just in the VFW
No, I just
hall?
went and found places that already had it.
Right, that's what I was saying. And in my world, it was we did that. We made our own light show and our own flash pots and pyro bombs and. We stole floodlights from the putt-putt when they would shut down. They had all the colored lights. I think I just confessed on tape that I'm a thief. I stole colored floodlights from the Peter Pan Golf.
I was going to say Peter Pan's going to knock on your door
and made light show for Watchtower shows, and played gigs in people's backyards on the weekend. High school keg parties and shit. It was a cross between Almost Famous and fucking Dazed and Confused. Yeah, just that kind of and Heavy Metal Parking Lot. If you people who know what that is, so yeah, I
love that movie.
Yeah.
Speaking of Watchtower, real quick, your interview with Billy was fantastic. Whatever. Like anytime Billy has to be like, I had a good time doing that. Like he's so guilt ridden. I love that dude so much.
Yeah, but I feel like he's, I've known him since he was even more gentle and childlike than he is, but he was trying to figure himself out. I met him when he was 16 years old. So it's kind of it's interesting to see him see some of the same qualities in him now that are more
pronounced now than they were.
Yeah, they're brighter, and he's not holding them back and trying to cover them up by either a trend or misspent youth with mixed emotions, because you're still a child. Even though you're 16, you're still a child, and you don't know better. Should I step in the cat shit to just piss people off, or should I step around it and be a good boy? And I think that's what heavy metal is for. Ultimately, is for you to figure out your whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's drama and emotion. And when you're a young person, I think that it's a good vehicle. Anyway, the interview with Billy was, thank you for saying that.
Can I quickly I got to tell you this one thing really fast, please, because it's so funny. Okay. So watching you tell Billy how Watchtower has affected other people, and like his just inability to get his head around it was hilarious. But my first real experience with Watchtower, or like knowing what Watchtower was I guess when we started Mr. Rocket Baby, Brian Keeling lived with Billy.
Right.
Like he lived with Billy and this guy that played bass with Extreme Heat, who was an awesome guy. I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, so
Was
Billy
that
White,
in Travis Heights? Were they living in Travis Heights?
It was in Travis Heights.
Yeah,
It was in Travis Heights. Yeah,
I've been to that house.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, I was transitioning. I was in Mr. Rocket Baby. I was transitioning from Fender amps to Marshall amps at Billy's insistence.
Okay.
Like, you're going to love this. You got to do this stuff. And so he was like, before your show, we had a weekly show. Come by and pick up my head and my amp and take it to sound check. So Richard Weiss, the guy that was in Mr. Rocket Baby, the guy from Miami, his family adopted a couple of kids that were born in Colombia. All right. So one of their adopted kids, the adopted son, his friend from Colombia came to Miami, and they came to Austin to visit Richard and come see Mr. Rocket Baby and the whole thing. So part of their thing was running around, running errands with us. And so we're like, hey, we got to stop up at our friend Billy's house and pick up an amp. So they're like, cool. So this kid from Colombia, Billy opens the door, and this kid turns bright red and starts like shaking. And we go in, and Billy's like, yeah, hang on, I'll go grab that. He goes into another room, and the kid turns around with full on fucking tears in his eyes and goes, is that Billy White from Watchtower? And we're like, what? And he's like, is that Billy White from Watchtower? And we're like, yeah. Dude, the kid was fucking, he couldn't believe that we went to go pick up an amp, and it was the fucking dude from Watchtower that opened the door. Yeah. He was physically shaken by the experience. It was unbelievable. I couldn't stop laughing because I was like, Billy's just some weird guy that is really nice and will lend you all of his stuff. You know,
well, how old is this kid? This is a trip because the kid is from Colombia. And how old is this kid?
He was probably, okay, so this is probably 1993. So I was 24, 25 years old. And this kid was probably 5 years younger than me.
Okay, maybe. So he's 19, 20 years old, and he's from Colombia, and he recognizes and know full well who Billy White from Watchtower.
He knew exactly who Billy White was when he saw him.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah,
man.
The power of the underground.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. Like the kid, he just couldn't believe it. We went to the Ark to watch like 6ix9ine rehearse so that he could see Billy play.
Wow.
He was bummed. He was way more into Watchtower than what Billy started doing later on.
Right.
He was still blown away.
Two very different things.
He wanted to hear thrash metal, and he got blues.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, people love the Billy White episode. I mean, obviously, you know, we got Jason, you know, kind of lured him into doing that. And it was interesting to hear all the feedback and see all the feedback because, as you know, Billy doesn't, you know, he kind of keeps to himself, and he's not doing a million interviews, and he doesn't do a lot of press, and he almost kind of downplays his accolades, you know.
Yeah.
So for him to make an appearance, and actually, it was like a Bigfoot sighting. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, it's Billy White," you know.
Yeah.
So, it turned out really well. It was a well-received episode, and oddly enough, my son, who is 16. Is an aspiring musician. He plays a bunch of instruments, but mainly drums. And the bass player that he jams with is Billy White's nephew,
Cash.
So, his name is Cash.
There's no end to these people.
He comes over to my house one day to jam with my son, and he goes, "You had my uncle on your podcast," and I'm like, "What? Huh?" And I said, "Who's your uncle?" And he said, "Billy White." And I thought, "What? Your uncle is Billy?" So then I texted Jason. I said, "There's this kid over here who's a bass player who's jamming with my son." And he goes, "Oh yeah, Cash." You know, he knew exactly who he was.
Is that Jason White's son?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So, my son and Cash White jam all the time.
But Cash is like 18 years old now.
Ah, damn, we're so old now, man.
Yeah.
That era, Billy and I became really close. Like even after Mr. Rocket Baby, he really encouraged me to not get another guitar player and to be the only guitar player.
Wow.
Which is really discouraging because we were doing shows together, and then he's a guy that, like, I'm not like a guy that wants to hear an endless guitar solo forever. But he's a guy that like he could play a 10-minute guitar solo and take it places where you never lost interest, never, you know, looked at your watch or rolled your eyes or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Just such an amazing, just such a musical human being. It's funny when he was talking about those chord things, I had this fucking memory about, on your show, he was talking about like doing these weird expansive chords. But I remember one time like being like, what? Because I was trying to figure out one of his songs, and I was like, I can't figure out where this goes. It sounds like it's G when I'm playing it, but then when I watch you play, you're playing some insane thing, and it was a G.
It was just a G.
Just like this kind. It was like a fucking like the professional guy's version of G, not like the cowboy guy.
Yeah, you've never seen that hand position before, right? Even though it's something you've played a million times.
Right. Yeah, it's like there was a thing we used to talk about all of that guy Dean DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots. He was like that's a guy that like his idea of what a chord is so unbelievable. Like he's one of my favorite chord people of all time.
Yeah. Pete Townsend's kind of like that too.
Yep. Yeah. Huge sounding chords.
Yeah. So,
all right. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail it. I love Billy White.
It's okay. Yeah, everyone does. And the key to you bringing it up and me putting him on the spot in the hot seat, how do you feel about touching people's lives in the way that you did through your crazy heavy metal guitar playing and creation and logos and artwork and language that is just universal, and you seem to have forgotten or realized, or it's not that important to you. When I bring it up, he just looked nervous. It's kind of like kind of like rolling over in the morning and your partner for the very first time saying "I love you."
Exactly.
You don't know how to react. It's like run away. Kind of a thing. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to make him uncomfortable. I needed him to realize that that's not going away. Just because he found essence of life to be his number one priority in health and health of body and spirit and mind, which is incredible. He's leveled up on what I feel like music does. He leveled up on the whole idea of what we're supposed to be doing here. Yeah. Not just a fellowship of, headbangers in the front row or everyone singing along around a fire or what. It's tribal. And his thing is, So when I brought it down to grassroots, he was like, oh, yeah, oh, shit,
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I know he did my show a long time ago, but I remember telling him that that really what ended up happening with him choosing to live the life that he did was like show business, and people missed out on a real authentic artist. You know what I mean? Like there's Billy White, no matter what he's doing, is a 100% authentic and himself.
He's
in that moment.
He's one of those guys that's motivated by the discipline and the art form, and not all the superfluous stuff that comes along with it. Not the stardom, not the glitz, he's all about perfecting his instrument and learning more about it and constantly seeking knowledge. That's what drives him, as opposed to I want to be a rock star.
Yeah. You know what happens to us, and that thing is we're just such big fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know he's a fan too, but not in the same way that we are. You know what I mean?
Well,
like I love the whole thing. Like I love show business. I love those Bobby Rock videos, the Crew from Hell videos, because the inside, once I saw behind the curtain, I never wanted to go in front of the curtain again. I'm like, I will be back here the whole time. Like, I love it. I love, even if it's not my gig, if it's not about me, I just love the inner workings of show business and being in it. Like, getting to the club when it still smells like the night before. It doesn't have the doors haven't been open. Like all of that stuff makes the hair on my arms stand up.
Yeah. I heard this is a weird turn, or maybe it's not a weird turn. I actually heard Bret Michaels of Poison say something similar by way he said, and I'm of course I'm misquoting here, but he did say something like, I love the smell of gear, amps,
100%.
Burning tube amps, the smell of a new Marshall cabinet when you take it out of the box, he's alluding to stuff like that. I love the smell of equipment, dirty microphone smell. He talked about it like it was a bit euphoric, like it just took him to a place. It could be grandma's cookies or apple pie, and you smell someone else's kitchen and you go, this smells like my grandma's house. It's the same part of the brain, and songs are like that. Colors can be like that. So
rock and roll has a smell.
Yes,
it does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Not for everyone, but it's for me.
It has many smells. So you were the other thing I remember about you, again from a distance, when I arrived in Austin, is it wasn't too long after I was here, I recognized you as sort of an established artist on the club circuit and whatnot. And then the thing that I remember was you were being courted by Lars Ulrich from Metallica. So tell which band, this is your project called Goudie, right? This is your self-named band. So after your various other bands, your next and latest project at the time was just called Goudie, and you got the attention of Lars somehow. Yeah. How did that all happen?
It took a lot of work.
And when was it?
That was in 1997. I met this guy who worked at Hamstein. Remember that publishing company?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so he worked at Hamstein, but like in the tape room. Remember in the basement they had that room where they dubbed cassettes and CDs and stuff? Okay, yeah. So he was the guy that ran that tape dubbing room.
Do you remember the guy's name?
Of course, he was still one of my very close friends, Martin Hanlon. You know him.
Okay,
the Scottish dude.
Yeah.
So he worked there.
My favorite thing about Martin was he would say these words, and they were just like, "Do you like breakfast?" And it wouldn't sound like, "Do you like breakfast?" No. Like it was like, "Do you like Portishead?" You know, I'm saying, "Are you a fan of Portishead, the band Portishead? Do you like Portishead?" Yeah, so I remember Martin. He was a lot of fun.
Great guy. So he took an interest in my songs and in me and Einar, what we were trying to do. And he was like, man, you're kind of, it seems like you guys have gotten off the track and you're just like, you become like a 3-set bar band trying to make a living playing music. And, you end up playing like The Joker by Steve Miller. Instead of like focusing on writing the best songs you possibly can, you're out like two buffoons, playing, at the Cantina Santa Fe in Corpus, and just not really doing the thing that you should be doing to take steps forward in a career.
Okay.
And he was right. And so we just kind of like, we had a talk with our drummer at the time. He did not want to commit to working, you know what I mean? Like, hey, we're going to stop playing a lot of gigs and we're just going to rehearse every day and we're going to try and do this thing. So, through his connections at Hamstein, Martin got us me and Einar in the studio to, Einar Peterson is a dude that he joined when he was in Mr. Rocket Baby, but he also played with, you guys remember, The Awful Truth, David Von Olerking? They were on Metal Blade Records, like a trio. And a couple of it, like the rhythm section went on to start, Galactic Cowboys.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Remember them?
Yeah.
Monty and Alan.
Yeah.
So the band that they were with, so Einar was playing with this dude, David. David and me were real close, and that's how I became friends with Einar. But they moved here from Houston, and Einar was living on my couch, and the Mr. Rocket Baby bass player quit, and it was awesome. I had a great bass player just living on my couch. So
Einar is
we ended up playing together.
Amazing bass player.
Amazing musician. Yeah, amazing musician, amazing dude. And so Martin was basically like, hey, you got to restructure your thing. You got to figure out who you are. Write songs all the time, rehearse all the time, get a real band together that wants to work, that wants to take, significant steps forward. And, if you do this shit, if you follow my playbook, you'll be signed in a year. And it was like a year and 5 months. So he was he got everybody he could get involved with. He was really close friends with Jim Kerr from Simple Minds. And Jim and Paul Kerr at one point started a management company. And so it was like Martin, Jim and Paul Kerr, and then this other guy named Jed Malone, who was married to Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's.
Wow.
Who also, it took like a village of rock stars to help Goudie get noticed by the world's biggest rock star. Like that's basically what it's like Jim, Jane, everybody was taking meetings with people on our behalf. And like, it was really unbelievably flattering. And it was really cool that everybody, Martin was the drummer of this great Scottish band from the 80s called the Silencers. Jim obviously was one of my favorite singers from one of my favorite bands growing up, Simple Minds. And Jane Wiedlin, I'm a huge Go-Go's fan anyway. And then we ended up working on a lot of music together and are still, really close friends. And
you played in the Kathy Valentine and the Blue Bonnets.
Yeah,
You played with them for a little bit.
We have a band. Yeah. We have it's been on it's not a real band. Like every time it starts to get real, something happens and someone can't do it. But
all right.
But it's the Blue Bonnets with me. But we do shows. It was called Johnny in the Ladies Room, and now it's called Lady Band Johnson.
Right, I read that somewhere, Wikipedia, and I like how it's deformed into this other name.
Kathy, full disclosure.
Johnny in the Ladies Room, I really like because it sounds like a dirty rock and roll band.
It does. Yeah. It totally does.
Yeah.
But Kathy didn't like my name.
Of course not. Of course not.
It's the truth. She didn't.
It makes me think of Gene Simmons, and most people, when you think of Gene Simmons, it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So there was a guy. There's a guy named Dan McCarroll who ended up being like the president of all of music, but he was a drummer that played with Amy Mann, Michael Penn, and these kind of people. And he was getting tired of the hustle of being a side guy in LA and trying to make ends meet. And like, you have a great gig and your life is great. And then, that band decides not to tour for 3 years and you're fucked. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So he wanted to find some kind of job. So he tried to get a job in A&R at a publishing company, and there was another Scottish guy there, this guy Kenny McPherson at Warner Chappell, who basically was like, if you want to be an A&R guy, here's a box of tapes. Go home and listen to these and tell me which 3 bands you would sign. And He came back, and we were one of the bands, and he was like, that's a band I really like. And so there was no room for him at Warner Chappell at the time. But then this guy Tim Duffy and he were friends, and he was like, hey, Lars Ulrich starting a record label, and why don't you be the A&R guy of the record label? And he was like, okay. And then he met with Lars, and Lars was like, what would, do you have anything that you would want to bring to the table? And it was just our cassette. Wow. And Lars was like, I like these guys. And so that was it.
What? So were you officially signed to Lars's label?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
we had a record that came out on there.
Okay. What's the title of the album?
The album's called Peep Show.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So did you, in the course of all this business and dealing with Lars's record label, did you ever have a sit down face to face with Lars and
I spent the night at his house and jam? We were friends. We talked on the phone every day for a while. And at one point we parted ways with Martin. I don't know if you guys know what happened with us, but we went to Los Angeles, like full fucking thing, recorded at Sunset Sound, and David Beerwald had a studio out there called the Palindrome, and we had that for a while. We worked with Fred Marr, who had done Matthew's Sweet Girlfriend and Lou Reed's New York and stuff like that. We were so blowing, doing the whole, like, the thing. When you get a record deal, you go to LA, you make this record, you work in all the best places with all the best people. And then when it was time to mix it, like after the first week of mixing, we were all kind of like listening to the first couple of songs in our apartment at the Oakwood in LA, and just like, man, do you guys like this? Like, no, this is just not very good. And then Lars called on that Sunday, and he was like, hey, have you guys been listening to this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I don't like the direction this took. And we're like, no, neither do we.
Yeah.
Wow. And so there was a time of much turmoil. We fired Martin. We fired the team that was producing the record. We came back. I cried in front of Snoop Dogg. who took pity on me and helped me. And let me tell you this: you guys friends with Danny Crooks?
Yes, I am.
I don't know him personally, but I know of them, of course.
So you used to go to Steamboat. You know, when you'd hug Danny, there were two things. He smelled like weed, really good weed, and some kind of cologne that he was into.
That's right.
When we hugged Snoop for the first time, Einar and I walked away and we looked at each other. We were like, he smells just like Danny. Looks at you, the same cologne as Danny.
Wow.
It was so weird. Anyway, so we fire all those guys, and then there was a whole weird time where they were taking our stuff to all these different mixing guys, and they were like, "No, we hate this. We would rather mix their demos," and all. It was freaky, and everything. We were hanging on by a thread. Like Elektra did not want to spend any more money on this band for this guy's vanity label.
Right.
But at the time, Metallica themselves, this is a fucking weirdest fact. In 1998, when we signed our label, well, I assume it was 1999 too, Metallica made up for 1/4 of all of the income that Elektra Records. And I'm talking about the fucking Doors, the Eagles, like Tracy Chapman had hits at the time. I mean, they're Elektra Records, and Metallica in the late 90s was literally responsible for 1/4 of their income.
Wow.
Like the whole label.
They had the catalog, and they had the Black Album, which is it's like Dark Side of the Moon or something.
They had Motley Crue too, which wasn't chump change
right
at that time.
And I want to say also that they were also well, I mean, the thing about Metallica too was people were buying those records. I mean, those records of Load, Reload, and Stevie Ray Load, whatever else they put out.
My load and your load.
My load, everyone's load together.
Everyone's load.
That's a load.
Wide load.
Those records sold like crazy, and I think at that.
Hey, we lost audio. We lost your audio.
There you are.
Are you back?
Sorry.
There he is.
You're back. You're back.
I'm back.
You're back. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I believe they were the most played band on American radio at that time. Like it was a heavy time, and so I would like
to say that I really would hope and pray that it would be because at the time they had the catalog, and not those okay Metallica records that you just mentioned, Load and Reload.
Well, it was a combination because even the Load and Reload sold like gangbusters.
They sold like crazy,
Yeah, they did, and they were a video band. By that point, they were a video band. Like they had a video for all of those singles, and there was a lot of singles between those two records because those records were probably done as almost like a double album.
Right. Yeah. Almost like they did Jurassic Park or whatever. It's like whenever they do sequels and they do two of them together at the same time.
Yeah.
So when you said you spent the night at Lars's house, what's his house like back then? What was that experience like?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's interesting because there's a side, I guess people know it now, but back then you didn't realize you were going to go to this guy's house. He was going to have like Basquiat's on the wall and like, I'm a huge art fan. Basquiat's my favorite artist. He had a couple of them. I mean, the guy could be like a art professor or some shit. Like the guy, I mean, he comes his dad, Torben was an amazing artist who did all this crazy fucking shit with tennis balls and stuff.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. He kind of came up. Lars's like godfather is Dexter Gordon, the jazz guy.
Wow.
Like, did you guys know that?
No.
There's like a whole weird, like, you think of him as like, from the streets guy, but he's a European, he's got a.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't need or want to really derail this, but it's something I like to get off my chest to just put in perspective too. And I'm not dogging anybody that has this type of education, because obviously Lars is educated. A lot of people don't think because there's people out there that don't necessarily like his drumming. And it's like, what the fuck are you worried about his drumming for? He's a composer. He's the one. He's
No, exactly
the reason that Metallica is Metallica. Now,
exactly right.
I can talk great stuff about Lars all day. I even, for one, like his drumming, because what else are you going to play to those riffs? What else are you going to play to that?
Yes.
Anyway, okay. So
I like his drumming in Metallica.
yes, me too. So he seems to have been some sort of, like we talked about, you worked at the Hallmark store in the mall. What did Lars do? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude, he was a drummer of Metallica from the time he was like, 16 or 17, right?
He gave up the tennis
17,
racket.
17. But I'm saying, how did they, when they decide to go get Cliff Burton and move to the Northern California, to the Bay Area, how are they paying rent? They don't go start a cover band and play downtown. Say what?
I'm sure Torben gave them, that Lars's dad gave him money.
Okay.
I've never met a more supportive dad.
But you understand what I'm saying. I'm just saying the flipping burgers thing is out the window. That's not.
No, he didn't flip burgers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So education and a famous tennis star dad who obviously has roots, European roots through art and sport and, oh my God, whatever else, is the village that helped build Metallica.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's fucking beautiful and amazing.
Oh,
and for those people who, I wouldn't even call that silver spoon either.
No, not at all.
I wouldn't call that silver spoon, because there's a lot of bands that have that one rich kid in it where just come over to my house. I have all the equipment. I have the best drum kit. I have Marshall stacks I sleep on Marshall stacks, and I knew some kids like that, but they just weren't very good.
No.
So this conversation, before I forget this, Jason.
No, I derailed it anyway. I'm sorry. I just want to have perspective on the shit that you're talking about. And you go to Lars's house and you're going, dude, art. It's fucking basket and fucking back,
I mean, he also had a neon sign that said drugs hanging up on his bar. So, I mean,
nice.
That's the thing about him that I thought was cool, is that he was able to cover all bases. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah.
The finest wines and, whatever else he's going to find out. But, so at that point when everyone realized that this version of this album wasn't going to go, that was when Lars, it was me and Jimmy, our guitar player, that went out to San Francisco to his place and stayed with him in Tiburon. And
so that wasn't in Marin County?
I might be in Marin County. It's just it's part of San Francisco. It's like northern. I don't know exactly how all of that works.
I've stayed at he's not there anymore, Jason Newsted's house for a night or two out there, and I think that was in Marin County.
Was it?
I don't even know if any of those guys are out there anymore.
Who knows?
I don't think they're out there anymore.
So did Lars drop the bomb on you at his house, or as far as?
Well, it was like, well, look, I'll fly you guys out here. Let's hang out. Let's just spend a weekend like hanging out. Let's not try and fix this on a phone conversation and stuff. That's not this. There's a lot at stake, and Electra wants me to drop you, and I don't want to drop you. Let's hang out. Hang out and get drunk and do drugs and figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So we did. We spent a couple of days at his house, and at one point he just said, like, "Look, nobody wants anything to do with this record. I have guys that said they'd rather mix your demos because they like those more because there's a life to it. What would in a dream world, if you had your choice to do anything you want, what would you do?" And we were like, we just want to go home. We know how to make records with Mike McCarthy. We record one whole song a day. We don't spend 3 weeks on drums. Like, there's a way to keep us engaged and keep us locked into this thing. And we know how to do that. Like, we're all short attention span kids. I can't spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks on drums for a record. I just can't. Like, I forget what the fucking song sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So we had worked with Mike at that Hamstein studio enough where we were recording. We got to a point where we could record we could record 2 songs a day. Like we were fucking fast and really good. And everyone knew how to work. Like, not we were better than anybody else, but together we knew how to do this shit. You know what I mean? And
for listeners and people watching, Mike McCarthy is an ace engineer, producer, sort of like helper of all sorts for people who have songs and need help putting them together in the studio. Works with Fastball and everybody. Godzilla Motor Company. Yeah. He
I
was
remember that.
That's where I was going earlier.
Okay.
So at the time that Johnny has the attention of Lars, I thought I remember, because I think I wrote about it in some capacity, that there was some buzz going around town that maybe Lars was interested in Godzilla Motor Company, or you had a chance to slip him a demo or something like that.
I remember that.
Was there some handoff or something?
No, I know.
Jason, you don't remember?
No, I do remember people thinking that how funny it was that Lars was coming to see us when he was actually going to see Godzilla Motor Company.
Interesting.
I remember people saying that to me. Like, dude, I remember going to Steamboat one night, and some guy was giving me, like, a guy that was my buddy. I can't even remember exactly who it was, but it was another musician guy. And he was like giving me this fucking look, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while." I was like, "Yeah, I heard you fired your whole band because Lars told you to." And like, I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, they're on their way here. Like, we're all hanging out tonight. Like, it was there was a lot of that stuff that happened back then that was really odd and kind of uncomfortable in a way where you're like, stop thinking about me. Like, just ask me a question. I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Like,
I know all about it.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. I know all.
Yeah,
about
Jason,
it can be.
Jason, you don't remember any sort of any connection or any interest from Lars?
No, I don't remember even having the opportunity to pedal GMC to Lars. But I mean, Mike McCarthy was so into GMC, it wouldn't surprise me if he would have been in the room with all you guys, Johnny, and then like walk up to Lars and go, "Hey, check out Jason McMaster." You know what I mean? Because he loved it. He loved the material, but I think it was just a bunch of jabberjaw. I don't think there was any solidity, or I don't think that there was anything solid going on.
Right. Okay.
I think we gave him not to take credit away from Mike. I think we gave it to him. To be honest.
Out. Oh, good.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, I gave it to Jason Newsted. I had a cassette tape, actually, that I went and saw Metallica at the Frank Owen Center and gave him a cassette. Had the opportunity to fly Jason a cassette tape, and that's what spawned, "Hey, you should come out to my house. I'm writing some songs with some friends. We'll barbecue." And it was one of those that nothing,
that's awesome.
No fruit on the tree came of it, but.
I'm laughing because I went and saw Newstead when he had his band Echo Brain.
Yeah.
And they played at the building that became Steamboat. After Steamboat moved away from
La Bear.
Oh, really?
After it left 6th Street and it went to Riverside.
La Bear.
Right.
Yeah, and
that was La Bear. Yeah.
Yeah. But I went out and I went to sound check hoping to meet Newstead because I actually worked at the Statesman, which was the building right next door. So I wandered over there about 4:00, whenever I think sound check might be. And sure enough, there's Newstead out in the parking lot. And I knew I was going to try and do this. And at the time, Jason had, I think the Guilty Pleasure record, the Broken Teeth Guilty Pleasure record had just come out. So I, being the Broken Teeth champion, went over there with a handful of CDs, and I met Newstead and I said, "Hey, this is my buddy's band. You probably know him, Jason McMaster." He goes, "Oh yeah, of course." And I said, "He's got this new project. It's called Broken Teeth." And he looked at the CDs and he goes, "Well, the name's a lot better than his last band." I remember he made some crack about Godzilla Motor Company being like too much of a mouthful or something. He liked Broken Teeth.
The band name. Yeah.
Yeah, the band name. No, I wasn't knocking the music. He was talking about the name itself, and he thought Broken Teeth just had more punch or something.
I only met him a couple of times, but I would say that I feel like he was the only guy that I would outside of Lars that I'd really be friends with in that band. He's a really nice. A couple of times I met him, he's just really nice.
Yeah, he's
very
a
kind
dude.
gentleman.
You can hang with a dude. He's a dude you can hang with. Yeah, for sure. He's in Florida now. But so anyway, so you're at Lars's house and
we're at Lars's house.
This is not working. You want to go home.
Yeah, we were like, we'd rather record this record at home in Austin and just kind of have control of and kind of do it our way. Because you know what we can deliver. And he let us. Like it took he had to convince some people with the money that were, but he was like, I think they'll do better on their own. Like they wasted a couple $100,000 when they had total supervision. So let's just let them be alone. And they'll, like, we did it for a fraction of the budget. That was the other thing, was like, I didn't like a lot of the reason why we left the label was because of budgets. Like I couldn't double the way our contract was. Yours probably was too. Is your budgets double with each record you make, right? And we doubled our first one on our own, and so that doubling from there was like, holy fuck! Like, our lawyer Watford Genius was like, you guys are gonna have to sell like 1.6 million records to break even. But if you make another record with this label,
it's so normal to go over budget. I don't think a lot of people realize that, and that's been happening in the record business forever, unless it's controlled. All right, what's your band name? Black Sabbath. Okay, you got 3 days to make your first record. Ready, go. Tapes rolling, and they just play it live and overdub, and they're done.
Right. Well, then when there's an independent label, like if you were on Metal Blade, they weren't giving you endless. Like Elektra, there's nobody was watching. There was this thing that someone was like, how in the fuck did you guys get this in your recording budget? And one of them was, you either got like a food budget or I can't remember. There was a choice you got. You either got the money for the food or the food or something.
Yeah, like an allowance. You
like
got
a per diem kind of thing.
Yep, per diems, and then
we got both. Somehow we ended up with a food budget and per diems, and everyone that was just like, how the fuck did you do this? We're like, we don't even know. I don't know. Maybe we checked both boxes without knowing. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Maybe your lawyer had something to do with it.
So did the record come out on? Did the record come out on Elektra, or did it come out on Lars's sort of?
It came on Lars's imprint under Elektra. TMC, the music company.
Same thing.
What's it called?
The music company.
TMC.
The music company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was originally going to be called GAC Incorporated. Like the company, our checks were all from GAC Incorporated.
Wow.
It was the name of his company, but then I think Elektra was like, dude, we can't have like a name. Like, we can't have like Blow Records. Come on, dude.
Right.
You got to do better.
Yeah.
Bongwater Productions. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
But and it was during that weekend that me and Jimmy jammed with him. Like Jimmy and I traded off bass and guitar. He had a jam room.
Cool.
I tried to play ping pong against him when I was wasted, and he served twice. And then he put the shit down and started walking out. And I was like, where are you going? And he was like, this is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He made me laugh a lot. Like, I mean, he's just funny. Like the way he is funny. You know what I mean? Like the whole like, dude, fucking Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny Goudie. What am I going to fucking do now? Like that whole thing is just funny to me.
Yeah. He is a bit of a cartoon character, even though not intentional. Yeah. His mannerisms are it's like, just like you did that impersonation. His personality and his manners lend themselves to that.
Well, so you go home and you're basically re-recording, fluffing the songs that were on the demo plus your extra tunes to fill out the record. I get it. It's almost like you already admitted. I just want it to be like blurted out that a lot of the things that were happening were distractions to where and how you needed the record to go and sound.
Yeah.
And so when you're at home, those distractions go away.
Oddly enough, yeah, that's weird because normally people go away to not have the distractions. But the real thing was, is that, you know, I had a 4-track since I was like 16. I lived at the Congress House. I had comfort in the studio and being part of the thing, working with Mike McCarthy. When you go like, hey, can you do this to the bass when the chorus comes? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You show me.
Right.
Like Mike McCarthy rolls his chair out of the way and he goes, you do it.
Right.
Let me see what you show me. Like not in a shitty way, but like if you have a vibe and you have an idea, do it.
That's right.
And so
Here, you hold the paintbrush.
Yeah. And so in LA with all of these professional fucking dudes, like we would just sit I would go cut a basic where they're just keeping the drum. So I'd just be playing guitar and scratch vocal and then just go smoke weed and play video games. And that just like, I'm way more engaged than that. And it was just kind of like, there was nothing for anyone to do the whole time. And really the magic of that band was that we were all much better all together, all hands in. Everybody, like the record ended up being produced by us, Mike McCarthy. And one of the insurance things that they sent was our A&R guy moved here for 6 weeks while we recorded just to make sure that shit didn't go off the rails again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and we had to, every day at the end of the day, someone had to go FedEx the day's work to Lars. I mean, it wasn't like they were like, oh, just let them go free. They kept a very close eye on us.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. When the toys were still on Columbia, we were doing that. We were, you know, done with all the big tours, and we're writing what would be a third record, right?
Right.
And it's the same thing, but we're all at home. There's no distractions. We're just writing a record. We're not recording the record. We're writing a record, and we must have written 80 fucking songs. But I remember well, it was, you know, all right, well, here's a copy for management, and they would make copies and send them to the label. And it was just FedEx every 2 weeks at least. Here's 4 more songs. Here's 6 more songs. Here's 3 more songs. Until we just ultimately said, hey, can we just fuck off?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We asked to be let go because it was
so did we.
Yeah. It was a similar situation. Yeah.
The one stupid thing that we both did leaving is that if they drop you, there's a chunk of money. Like when Capitol dropped 16 Deluxe, that's how Frenchie has the bubble. You know what I mean? Like you get a big chunk of money and you can go do something with it. But yeah, you know, I mean, we thought our impression and just kind of our initial conversations with Lars were like kind of, we would like to follow in the Metallica sort of career path of just get out there and get fans and make a couple records. And then by the time your third or fourth record comes out, you can have a hit. But that wasn't the time of the music industry was dealing in such giant numbers and so many records were being sold.
Right.
And then we had the amazing fortune of having our record drop on July 11th, 2000, which was a Tuesday. But that was the Tuesday after the Friday that Lars live on CNN showed up at the Napster thing with the truck and taking in all the names. Oh. So being associated with Lars when our record came out was literally the worst guy to be to be handcuffed to, you know, as he's jumping off this cliff. You're like, wait a minute, I want to have a career. You know what I mean? I don't think that ruined our career, but Lars had become, especially after we parted ways with Martin, our relationship, there was no manager for a while. We had no manager for a year. So for a whole year of that, it was no manager. Our lawyer, if we were in trouble and we knew we'd have our lawyer call. Right. But otherwise, it was like I was on the phone with Lars pretty much almost every day.
Wow.
I mean,
easy, man.
I talked to him the night after they played at Woodstock 99, like after their show that night, because we were just about to start recording Peep Show, because that was the summer of 99. Just like, weird shit was, you know, weird historical things would happen. And the funniest thing, not the funniest thing, but the oddest thing was, you know, We got signed in 98. Our record ended up coming out in 2000. And then in January of 2001, when our second single went to radio, Elektra just gave up and they pronounced your record dead, which is a really horrible thing to get a call. Like, your record's dead. And you're like, what? Like, yeah, you're not doing this tour all spring and not going to radio. You guys need to figure out what's going to happen next. And maybe you should try and listen to Papa Roach. No offense against Papa Roach, but that just wasn't what I was going to do.
Yeah, that's where a lot of it was going anyway.
I did get that. Yeah, I basically got the, hey, you guys could really, if you stop singing like a girl all the time, maybe more people would like you.
Right.
So, but not from Lars, ever. He never, he would make creative suggestions, and I never took one that I didn't want to. And I was always real honest with him. And he was at his funniest when I would reject him in that way. I remember one time we were on the phone and he was like, there was an ending that he wanted me to get real dramatic on. And I did what he wanted and I did what I wanted and sent them both to him. And he was like, cool, man. Which one do you think is good? I was like, I'm going to do the one I like. And he goes, that's cool. It's your career. I've already got one. See you later. He said shit like that all the time. That was really funny.
Right.
So like when, it got to where we found out what the budget was going to be, and it was just like the musical landscape. I feel like if we would have hung on, that music kind of was coming, like the Strokes and stuff was coming out, which sort of like spoke a little bit more to what we were about as a band. Yeah. Even Coldplay at the time was probably a little bit more on par than what was actually happening at alternative radio.
Yeah. For lack of terminology. Yeah. The alt rock, or even just hard rock that wasn't metal. Like
right.
Papa Roach is metal, but they had to call it new metal. And they were
right.
That sort of like attached itself to Korn, which Papa Roach and Korn are not the same thing to me.
No,
but they're the same thing
either.
To someone standing in a Hot Topic store at the mall going, what shirt do I want to buy today? Will it be Papa Roach or Korn? Because they're the same thing and they're not the same thing at all.
Yeah.
But no one knows that and no one realizes that. They're just going by what's on the radio, and it's such a smarmy moment in music anyway. So
yeah, it's awful.
You were really trying hard to make your songs stick, and that's all we were trying to do in the industry anyway.
And I feel like even with Dangerous Toys and even with Goudie, it wasn't like we weren't making accessible music,
right?
You know what I mean? We were. We're making songs you could. I sing "Sportin' a Woody" all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we were making accessible music. It's not like we had to, chase radio or something. But what I was going to say is sort of like after that record came out and the Napster thing took on a new life. Like it started off very innocently. And then like once he took the names, then he was vilified and then he disappeared from our lives. Like, he disappeared. Like I went from talking to him every day to never being able to get a hold of him, to calling his number, calling his assistant. Like no one would answer. No one would talk to me. No one would talk to us. And then he like showed up one night at some gig in New York and basically told us that, Elektra was just begging him to drop us and get rid of us and all this stuff. And that he wanted to keep us, but then he disappeared again. And honestly, it wasn't until 2004 when I went to go see Some Kind of Monster that any of my questions were, I was like, oh, that's why he wasn't calling. His fucking life was falling apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we all knew Jason quit during that time. The other thing too was like, he always used to say to me, like, look me in the eyes and go like, hang on to Einar, dude, because if Jason ever quits, he's joining Metallica. You know that, right? And I would be like, no, you can't take my dude. And also like, Einar would join Metallica so fast, he would even fucking remember my name when he joined the band. So I was like, and I remember like reading like Jason quits Metallica, and I was like, oh fuck, now I gotta find a new bass player.
Well, did Einar? That's that interesting. That
well,
raised the flag.
Let me take
Okay.
Nothing made A&R sadder than never get like even A&R was like, well, here we go, baby.
You answered
I'm just
my
waiting
you
for that
answered,
phone to
you
ring.
answered my he answered my question. He stayed awake for a month waiting for the phone to ring. Yeah.
Every time he walked in the room, it was like that show Veep where Julia Louis-Dreyfus walks in. Did the president call? No, he hasn't called. It was like that. Hey, did Lars call yet? No,
Yeah.
he hasn't called.
No. Yeah. And Metallica announced new bass player. Hey, did Lars call? Hey, no, you need to pull your head out of the sand waiting for Lars to call and notice that they're making a record with their new bass player right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, regardless of the outcome, I mean, that in and of itself is a huge, what an experience. I mean, who gets to say that? That's incredible. Just incredible.
I'll be honest, in the whole experience of it, there aren't many people that ever fucking believed in me as much as that guy. Like, honest, that guy spent almost $1 million trying to make it happen for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And really, really believed in my band. Like, really fucking believed in the music that I made. Really was in awe of what I did. Like, I remember he had a room at the Sunset Marquee, and that room had a piano in it, and I fucking sat down and would start singing along, and he would be like, how do you just like pick up instruments and just start playing songs just by yourself? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like, it's like, dude, where I come from, if you can't do this, they'll kick you out.
Right.
If you write songs and you can't pick up an instrument and play a song, he came from such a different world.
Yeah.
But he was just always in awe. It was like, if I sat down and played a song, if it was fucking, all wasted in the middle of the night playing like Close to You by the Carpenters, you would see this guy almost tear up. Like, he was just like, you're a genius. You're the only fucking genius.
Well, let's talk about this for 2 seconds. That's an innocent moment for Lars, just like it's an innocent moment for you. That Lars is a fan of music. Like during 100%. this roller coaster ride with his vanity label, and you guys are his boys. He likes. I would read, snippets of people, Rolling Stone interviews or stuff. What do you listen to right now? I really like the new Alanis Morissette record. Oh yeah. He liked stuff like that. That was my Lars impersonation. That was
when that's a good one. When we went out there in like January of 2000 to find a new manager before our record came out, and we ended up hanging out every night at the bar at the Sunset Marquee with a couple of other people. This band Remy Zero, that was originally from Birmingham.
Heard of that?
And then this Scottish band called Travis. And I guess Jerry Cantrell, Lars was going to sign Jerry Cantrell at the time, and he was hanging out, and somebody else in our band. And every night we would go to the Sunset Marquee, and it would close, and they would obviously let us just stay there and bartend and do the whole thing. And it was the Oasis album, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, was out. And we literally would only listen to that record for like 3 hours a night, every night. Like, as soon as it would end, it started over. And like, everybody had their favorite song. It was just, he was such a fucking man. Going to his house that weekend that I spent there like that, like he had a jukebox, and it was like, once the important stuff is done, it was like, have you ever heard Deep Purple's whatever? Like, no.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, he had a jukebox and,
Oh, he probably had a Deep Purple jukebox. But here's my everything jukebox, and then like he opens this curtain, and here's my Deep Purple jukebox, right?
Well, I definitely got a love for Deep Purple doing that, but also like all of his like bootleg videos, like like in the '90s, how you go to record conventions and get like I had all these weird things of like Parliament Funkadelic from 1976 at the Summit in Houston or something.
Yeah.
And he had like fuckloads. I mean, he had like I'm sure I've told you this. That same weekend, he had a room. He had a music, a record room that had like cassettes, CDs, and records and everything.
Awesome.
And he had Watchtower in there.
Wow.
Cassettes of Watchtower. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen the magazine photos where he wears the Watchtower shirt. I mean,
the skinny on that was I had at some point gifted Jason Newsted a Watchtower shirt. And he's like, I don't do black smalls. I'll give it to Lars. I said, fine. I don't give a shit. Clean laundry. Here you go. I don't care who, if you change the oil on the bus, I don't care. But what I was going to say, back to what I was going to say real quick is, the innocence there, like you're just a song guy and he's not really, he's a song guy in a different way, but he's not really an instrumentalist. I don't think he really plays anything other than drums, power chords and whatever, but he's not. And there's a lot of producers that are just like that. Like I made a record with Roy Thomas Baker, Queen, Journey, Cheap Trick. Can't play, he can't, yell into a paper bag and make it sound good, So I'm
a huge Rick Rubin guy. Like,
same. He can't play anything, but he knows.
I don't think you need to.
No, I agree. I think it's fine that there's these borderline genius or just completely savvy to music only by going by gut because of their fandom of music and sound and art and things like that. Whatever they fall in love with is whatever they fall in love with. There's no rhyme or reason as to what it is. So I love this moment that you've shared with us about Lars just going like a puppy dog going, what the fuck is, just getting all emotional. Oh yeah. That makes sense to me in a huge way. And people are making fun of the way he plays drums, but they don't know him the way that you've learned to know him.
Well, I played with him, and I do make fun of the way he plays.
Well, hold on a second. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly.
You know what I'm talking about. And that's the romantic in me coming out, going, "Holy shit! That just uncovers so much shit if you let it."
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously a passionate dude, super passionate
100%.
about music and period. So, I mean, that's what drove him to be the president of the Motorhead fan club. And that's what drove him
exactly.
a tape trader from Denmark, sending tapes back and forth. I mean, if he never made it in the business, he would still be that nerd, but he would be, he would be me,
just like
sitting in a room full of shit, talking about rock and roll,
He even had a show like we had for a while on Apple Music. He had
that's right.
An interview show.
Yeah.
So he's a fucking, he's just like us, sitting around getting all fucked up with that dude and listening to records is unbelievably educational, super fun. And like you're dancing like two dudes, just dancing, listening to music. No matter what music it is, you're dancing, like you can't stop like getting into it,
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's just in his blood, whether the world, whether he became world famous or not, he was always going to be driven by his respect and passion for music.
So you're still, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say about his dad too, like one more thing, because he did die this year. And I was a huge fan of that guy. That guy was a huge fan of ours too. Like he was equally as complimentary as Lars, all that. He would show up at shows of ours. Like whenever we were anywhere near the north, like anywhere near Seattle where his dad lived, he would be at a show.
Wow.
Or like if we had a showcase that was really important in LA, he would come down for it, not just for us, but for Lars. He would, that relationship that he had with his dad was easily, like, it was unbelievably beautiful.
They were connected in a
very connected.
Very big way. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
His dad is a very cool dude.
I didn't know that Torben lived in the States, actually. So, but that's,
So he looked like Gandalf or something, like actual. he has this long fucking white beard and he has these weird long fingers.
It's a real deal. It's a real deal. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry, Dave, before I forget this, I just want to say we're about to start talking about your podcast.
Yes.
So, Dave, tell me
that's where I was going, Jason. You're reading my mind. I wanted
like-minded.
Obviously Lars is a huge talking point, and I do appreciate indulging us with all this.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I really don't mind talking about it, and it was a very significant part of my life, and it is like one of those things. Like when you were telling Billy in your interview with Billy, like, can you believe this happened? Like these people's lives were changed because of you. Look at what they're saying. And like to think like the biggest rock star in the world spent a lot of time thinking about me.
Yeah.
Right.
When he was like, just the thought of like, like you're walking through the mall, you see 25 Metallica shirts and you just want to grab everyone and go like, dude, that guy, I can make that motherfucker cry. Like,
yeah,
you know
right.
I mean? Like,
I've done it.
It's not lost on me that happened. And the sort of the weight of, the sad thing was it didn't happen in a way that we had all hoped and set out for it to happen. But the experience itself was just beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
awesome.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, nobody gets to say that. Very few people, anyway. So you definitely have a unique experience in that regard, and I just love all the insight you shared with us.
And you've been busy musically since. It's not like you came home, made a record, and it didn't do anything or whatever. It's you're a musician and it's full on all the time.
Yeah.
How many gigs a week? How many gigs a week do you play now?
Anywhere from 1 to 4.
Oh, right. Okay.
Under what name? Multiple, or is it
multiple?
Like, I'm in Skyrocket. We play a lot, and I do a lot of solo stuff, and I have a solo band, and I play with other people. Like last year, I played guitar and keyboards for Fastball, and
I saw that.
I've played with BoDeans in that capacity as like the harmony singing acoustic guitar guy, and with Ian Moore and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of different people that I've been really fortunate to hang with and play with.
You get the call when they need you or want you, or they have a special show they want you for.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been trying to figure out like why anyone would ask me to be a guy like in their band. Like, there's guys that are way better than me. Like, but I realized like, oh, all these people are like my friends. So, I'm at that point in my life where I would much rather have some friend of mine that wasn't near a virtuoso, but was super fun to hang out with in a van or bus or whatever,
It's about the hang. It's about the hang. Cheap labor is worth it when it's a good hang.
Yeah. That comes up on this show all the time, because we're always talking to musicians, and they can't emphasize enough how important it is to be working with people that you can sit across from on a bus or in a van or in some dank dressing room or whatever for weeks at a time. So yeah. Let's go on to your podcast, man, because that also is a feather in your cap. I mean, you've been doing this podcast since 2011, I think, and if who are listening and watching, it's called How Did I Get Here? And so 2011, Jason and I are obviously very new to the podcast thing, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2011, I feel like podcasting, it's certainly not as prevalent as it is today.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So what inspired you in 2011 to start a podcast? And you're up to thousands of episodes now, aren't you?
Yeah, I just put out 1,410 on Friday.
That's insane. I mean, that's amazing. So in 2011, you have this idea. So how did it go from idea to reality?
Well, I had all the stuff. Like, there's stuff on it right now, but I can show you guys. Like, here. Like, I have a whole studio here, and I had microphones and everything, and once I realized, I was real excited because I was able to hear Fresh Air on NPR whenever I wanted to, because somebody told me it's available on Apple Podcasts, and then they explained what it was. And then I was telling my cousin how cool it was because you can get Fresh Air whenever you want it and listen to it. And he was like, oh, dude, some of your favorite comedians have their own original. And I was like, wait, you can just do this? And he's like, yeah. I was like, really? And then I started digging into it. And then Dale Dudley started his, and he and I are very close friends.
Okay.
And the very first episode that he did was him just really drunk and very upset, talking for an hour and 15 minutes. And you didn't know, like, if he was going to kill himself in the middle of it or if he was going to discover a cure for cancer. Like, it was so fucking out there that I was like, okay, I'm totally doing this. And so my initial thing was just, I was going to talk. Just me, no guests.
Yeah.
But then I started practicing, and it was terrible. Like, it was like you don't you don't think about how long 5 minutes is
Oh yeah.
until you're trying to talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
And so it all came to me when, Nakia,
Yeah.
he was on The Voice. It was like the first season of The Voice. And
Isn't he a current DJ on Sun
he's a
Radio?
DJ.
Yeah.
Yes, he just interviewed me on Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome! That's awesome, and it's a little bit nepotism or whatever the right word is, where they play his shit and then he's a DJ. It's kind of like,
That's
back
why
to
I've been trying to get it.
Yeah, right. Right. You want to get a gig there so they'll play more of your shit. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, and I think that there is some truth to this, that Metallica owns the venues they play at, that Metallica owns the radio stations that their songs are number one on.
That's not true.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Is it true?
James Brown, when they wouldn't play his music, he would buy the radio station.
That's pretty badass.
James Brown. So
Yeah.
it's not unheard of, but it's just something that I heard.
Well, that means that Metallica would have to own every NFL football stadium in North America.
I'm just saying, you got to,
It would have to be a Clear Channel.
when
too.
you're a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, you can't keep all the money. You can't spend it all in one lifetime, even, they say.
No.
So that's why they do charity. I mean, and they should. It doesn't matter. It's a brand. So
Yeah.
Anyway, not to get off track, but I think that it's really cool that Sun Radio has these local musicians who are the DJs, and the perks are nice.
Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah.
So I went to with my girlfriend at the time to Baby Acapulco to have dinner and have a couple margaritas, and then walk home and watch Nakia on The Voice. And so we started watching him on The Voice, and all I could think was like, God, I saw this dude a couple weeks ago at Saxon Pub, and there's like 20 people there.
Yeah.
And now he's playing for like God knows how many millions of people.
Yeah.
Like, I bet he's just standing there going like, how did I get here? And then all of a sudden it just hit me. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to interview my friends, and it's going to be called How Did I Get Here? It just all came to me watching Nakia.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
So, so 1,400 episodes later, I actually, I know you had Phil Lewis from LA Guns on your show. I'm a big fan of his. And,
can I say this?
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a little bit intimidated by you, but you send me, I remember when you sent me this message, you're like, hey dude, the song you played on the show, it's not Phil singing, it's the other guy. Do you remember that?
Oh, vaguely.
And I was like, God, if it would have been anyone that wasn't Dave that wrote me that, I think I turned red when I was like, oh God, I fucking called Phil. I was like, oh dude, I'm so sorry. He didn't even notice.
I forgot all about that.
Sorry, but yeah, I did have Phil on.
But you guys obviously have a history together, because I was listening to the show, and it's clear that you guys go way back together. But your show,
he lived in Austin for a while, so
yeah, he lived in Austin for a bit.
Our ex-wives were friends. That was like, I went to dinner one night. It's like same thing. Like, oh, my friend Tracy is married to this dude. He's a musician. Tracy was like, oh, my friend's married to this dude. He's a musician. You guys will get along. So we went to dinner, and we really hit it off.
Awesome.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan. But your
he's a nice guy too.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Your podcast is kind of, ours is very music oriented, and most of our guests, 99.9% of our guests are musicians, but you're kind of like into a little bit of everything, right? So tell us your topics, or what people can expect to go to your podcast.
It's mostly musician on musician. But there are occasionally, I have like people that write books, but they're musicians that write books, or people that write books about musicians, or, I had Boudreaux and the Bloody and Bruce, same guys that you had on, and like, who else about? It's rare that it's not music related.
Yeah.
Because even when I have directors or people that have made a movie, there's some kind of musical connection to it.
Yeah. We're the same. Yeah. So in all those 1,400 episodes, who did you have on your show where you learned something that really surprised you? Like maybe you went into the conversation thinking X about this person, and then they just blew your mind with something you had no idea that this was coming out of left field. Was there anybody like memorable in that regard?
Even though I had a falling out with him a couple of years ago, Michael Corcoran was humanized to me talking like, and that was huge.
Yes.
Because I asked him to be on the show pretty early on because I realized that I didn't have anyone on that I didn't like yet.
Oh, wow.
So he had never written anything bad about, only written good things, but I found his role in our community to be an agitator and kind of his thing was to fuck with people and piss them off. And he liked that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And openly he said it, and getting to know him in that couple of hours that we talked made me like him. Yeah. As a human being.
I always
until we had
him.
a falling out a couple of years ago.
Right. I always liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's my idol as a writer. I don't know, Johnny, how much you know about my background, but that's kind of what I do on the side. I
do. I know what you do, man. That's why I was intimidated. That was like I had a real journalist fucking write me and go like, "Hey, you got the facts wrong." That's why I was like, "Oh no, Metal Dave thinks I'm a hack."
But that's what real journalists do, don't they? They can't go to sleep at night. He's playing the wrong song. I'm sending him an email right now.
It's the nerd in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Corcoran was my idol, and I went to his memorial service a couple of weeks ago, and if he was listening to this right now, he would not disagree with anything you just said.
No. And in fact, everyone that was real close to him, when I would say like, I didn't like him for years, and then I got to know him, and then all of a sudden I'd see him places, we'd hug, we'd talk for like 20 minutes, and it was awesome. I had this warm feeling, and then he wrote this really weird. He had that Substack, and I was having Eric Johnson on the show a couple of years ago in 2022, and I got this call from his manager on Mother's Day, which was the Sunday before we were going to do this interview, and I was at my grandma's house, and he called and he was like, so Eric Johnson, the guy that murdered my mom, who actually died like a month ago, which is not awesome, but it's a relief. He had this recording studio here in town. And when Eric Johnson was doing pre-production for the album Tones, my mom and this guy were dating, and he would let me just go hang out. And so I was hanging out while Eric Johnson and Tommy Taylor and Kyle were doing we're doing the pre-productions with Tones for Tones with David Tickle, the producer guy. And so Michael wrote this Mother's Day article. I mean, I laugh about it now because it's so absurd. But he wrote this Mother's Day article that was just like the darkest part of all of that stuff. It was the darkest, like the gross part, like the violent shit and all this stuff. And so apparently Eric read it and then was like, "Oh fuck, that's the kid that's interviewing me tomorrow. I remember that guy." And so his manager called. He was like, "You can't bring up that studio." And I was like, "Why not? That's like the best part of the whole thing. That's how I know him." And he was like, "Because he doesn't want to talk about it because of Corcoran's article." And I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Lost you again. There you go.
Anyway, so he doesn't want you to talk about this because of the article Corcoran wrote. And then I went and saw the article, and I was like, "What in the fuck is wrong with this dude?" So I called him and I yelled at him, and he did take it down in his defense. But I was really pissed. Like I was pissed in that, like, why would you do that? In what world do people need this on Mother's Day? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Happy Mother's Day every day, everyone. This guy's mom, was brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And that I was just like, God, it's fucking gross. Like, what a weirdo. So anyway, I have forgiven him in my heart since then, and I felt bad that I never reached out and apologized before he passed away. But
yeah, you don't have to own up to that. I think that he understood probably why. I mean, he took it down. He understood. Well, he understood.
In his defense, Mike, did you ever watch the show Entourage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so my cousin was sitting there when I called him, and when I got off the phone, she was like, "Dude, you just went full Ari Gold on that guy."
Right.
So I said some things that even surprised me.
Wow.
Well, he was talking about he was or he almost was. It's not my place, but talking about shit that he probably had no right to really talk about.
Well, anybody can talk about it. I just thought, like, why 20, 30 something years later are you going to bring this into a thing and make it all weird? Make it weird for me and my family. Like, we shouldn't have to see that shit again.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, well, outside of that, poor guy. So Michael Corcoran was one that surprised me, because I found that that people are human beings, like everyone is, no matter how much you dislike them, or no matter what kind of public persona offends you. Outside of that, they love their mom, they love their kids, they're human beings, And so that made me like Michael for a decade.
Yeah. So how have you been able to, Jason and I have been doing this show for 3.5 years, and sometimes we look at each other and can't believe that we're still doing it after 3.5 years. You've been doing this for 13 years, and do you still crank out
all the time
2 episodes a week or something?
Yeah.
So, how do you find the energy, I guess, for that? You're obviously a talker. You're not a wallflower. You enjoy the conversation, that sort of thing. But I know from our perspective, it's like a full-time job, not just doing the show, but then all the social media and the promotion and the post-production and the, all the stuff that goes along with it, booking the guests, et cetera, et cetera. How do you manage that? Are you a one-man band, or do you have someone behind the scenes?
100%.
Yeah. So,
I think that's why it's so easy. At one point there was a little while early on where I had a producer, but it's like all the emails like tripled and doubled, and like, instead of me just reaching out to someone and going like, "Hey, you want to come do this?" Or there was a lady like, "Hey, are you available?" I said, "No." "Hey, he says he can't do this. Can you do this?" It was just too much. And so I was like, one of the things that I do love about it is the autonomy of it. And even though it is a lot of work, I don't edit. I don't have video. I don't do things with it that'll make me go in the hole financially. Like, I know my friend Kurt Newman, the guy that is the singer of BoDeans, he did a show like this. And at one point he was like, we can't sustain this because it's costing so much. And I was like, "It costs you?" Like, it's like, "Yeah, we have a video team that come." Like, oh God, the second that I had stress like that, I wouldn't do it. So I've made it so that it is a one-man show. It's hard to put out those 2 shows a week, but early on there were different people giving me advice. And like Dale Dudley, before I put it out, he was like, "Just know content is king. So you should do like 30 of them and then put them out together and then to figure out whatever pace." Oh God, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Anyway, I have a friend at KLBJ that's part of the comedy world, and introduced me to Mark Maron when I very first kind of started this, and we were talking about music and stuff, and
he's got a show.
He's nice to me.
Mark Maron's got a show.
He does have a show.
Yeah, and it's fucking amazing. It's great.
Great show. Yeah. And he was a huge inspiration for me from the beginning, but he was like, there was this thing that he was like, when you're doing this show, and I guess this was like, I'd started it in August, and when's the Moon Tower thing is in like March or April or something. And so that's when I met him. So it was a few months after I'd started it. And I had a couple of times where I missed a week, didn't get it together. Someone didn't come over or something. And his thing was like, not because of any of that, just in general advice. His thing was, don't make us look like losers. Like, there's other people that if you come out here and don't take it seriously, then it makes the rest of us look like we don't take it. Like, this needs to be like a real fucking thing.
Yeah.
And so in order to do that, if you're going to put out 2 shows a week, you need to put those shows out, like, it would be like, if Jimmy Fallon was like, oh yeah, I couldn't get it together to make the show happen tonight.
Right.
It'll be tomorrow or next week or so. You know what I mean? He's like, people will count on it, then deliver and be consistent. And so I've been that.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
I hear you loud and clear, man. I mean, we put out a new episode every Wednesday, and it's been every single week for 3.5 years. And
Tuesday's a freak out day for you, probably, or for Jared or whoever is working on it.
I don't know. I feel like the three of us, we all bring our skill sets to the table and we complement each other very well. And we have reached a certain cadence where it's a lot of it is on autopilot, but it is time consuming. Yeah. So, I can pull together questions. I can book a guest. Jason does the same. Jared does his thing, whatever it is he does. But we kind of do it we don't really stress out over it anymore because it's so natural now. We've been doing it for so long. But it is time consuming. There is no denying the amount of time it takes out of a day to be consistent, as you say. And I agree with you 1,000,000%. Consistency is the key. If you're going to stay in people's faces and you're going to be recognized as legitimate, you can't just put it out when you feel like it. And in our case, when we're trying to attract guests, that goes a long way to making us look like a legit outlet. We're not going to get the guys from Megadeth or Judas Priest or something like that if they look and find out that we put out an episode whenever we feel like it. They got
exactly right.
This show comes out and these guys are for real about it, etc. So
our safety net that I almost said thankfully, but it wouldn't be the end of the world whatsoever. When we first started, we'd pick a topic and we'd just get on here and start jabbing about it, and 3 hours would go by and we'd have a fucking blast doing it. So there's always that safety net in case we don't have a guest when things get really bad and we have to do something like that. But that hasn't been happening because we've always been able to come up with some kind of guest who's interesting, whether it be someone I know or someone Dave knows or somebody I'm a fan of or someone Dave's a fan of, and it makes it somewhat easy to be consistent, whether they're going to be a top shelf guest as far as numbers may go, that has clout and Rolling Stone covers, stuff like that. It's not something that we've really had to worry about. It comes up every once in a while, but it's rare. So for you to put 2 episodes out every week, the fact that you're probably a one-man show does make it easier as to just comparing it to what we have, which is the same but very different at the same time. It takes a small village for us to do our thing.
I think a video component immediately makes exponential amount of work, and editing also.
That's Jared's forte. And I think if he was listening right now, or if he was with us, he would say that, much like you said, Johnny, that what you hear is what you get. You don't do a lot of editing and splicing and, oh my God, he stuttered there, or he said or he lost his train of thought there, cut it. And, we don't do any of that. I think Jared, the extent of his editing is he drops photos into the intro where we have a photo montage just to sort of offer a visual representation. And then we've got that little animated sort of intro outro thing. But by and large, the body of the show is the conversation, just how it happened. And I'm not taking anything away from him. I mean, that takes a lot of time. And there's been times when he's about to go, out on a gig for 2 weeks on tour with somebody or whatever. And he's got to all of a sudden slam out 5 episodes because he's going to be away from his rig for a while. And so everyone in this show, myself, Jason, and Jared, I can respect and appreciate what everybody brings to the table, because I know how much work and thought goes into it to make it happen on a regular basis and to make it quality. The other thing is being consistent with Mickey Mouse content is no good either. So hopefully we're kind of we're consistent and offering good content, good video, good audio, etc. So,
when you had me
speaking of good audio, can I quickly say something, Jason?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm also a huge fan of That Rocks, and I watched every episode of that metal show.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you were there and you were like getting married or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Every time someone I knew was on there, I would fucking freak out. But the last episode, like it popped up after we said we're gonna do like last week or something, right?
Yeah, That Rocks.
Yeah, That Rocks. Yeah.
There, I was gonna say like they need some microphones or something, because that camera was really far away from you, and I was like, they're gonna do it like this? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys?
Well, I'll tell you what was wrong with that. We were on a cruise ship.
I know.
And one of the photographers there, who Neil Lim Sang, who's an awesome photographer, rock photographer, but he does some other awesome shit that no one really knows about. He's I think it's okay if I say this. He's like an editor for like The Mandalorian. Those TV shows. Awesome. Yeah, he does shit like that. Yeah. Anyway, hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. But anyway, because he's like, shh. And that's what he does for real. But, they just go, we'll just get, so-and-so. Hey, Neil, you want to do? Sure, man, I'll film you guys. So he's just filming this on a cruise ship. There was very little planning. There's no extra gear or mixer or mics or anything. Sure. And so you have, 40 different artists that, those guys could interview. And so I was shocked that they wanted to talk to me, because, they had Glenn Hughes on there, Ace Frehley, they had like these rock gods on there. And so I walk in and I thought the same thing that you're saying right now. It's like, how? He's like, literally 10 feet away so he can get everybody in the shot. And I'm like, I can't believe. So I made sure to project and try to face the camera, and they're pretty good. All those guys talk kind of loud anyway. So, but I understand what you're talking about. The quality of it is not grandiose at all, but the fanfare and the fun and the lightheartedness, I think, comes through.
I still watch it.
And everyone's going to. But I'm with you. If you read the comments, there's people that feel the same way that you do and I do about the audio. It's like, God, why don't these guys get closer to the microphone? It sounds like shit. I can hear the dishwasher through the hallway down there.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a like when they stopped doing the show regularly last year because of the technical problems they were having. Yeah. It got to be where like the technical problems were like part of the awesome part of the show for me.
Yeah, because it became part of the content. They started bagging on each other about
great.
Florentine's microphone sucks, or Don's video keeps freezing or something, and they would start busting each other's balls, and that became the show.
Or they would ask Eddie. They would ask Eddie a question, and he would disappear. Fall off the screen.
Or freeze.
Like, I guess he didn't want to fucking talk to us, Your
episode with Don was great.
Oh yeah, we've had Don on the show at least twice, maybe 3 times.
He's a fun guy. He's got a new podcast. He's got something new going on right now that I can't remember the name of.
It's called
right now.
Rockstrap.
That's right.
And it's supposed to, apparently it's a combination. It's a combination of rock stars and sports, hence the name.
Right.
And, his first guest was David Bryan from Bon Jovi. So he's
that's right.
Wow, that's awesome.
Great. Yeah, we love Don and Jim. We've had Jim on the show twice, I believe. Maybe just once with Jim, but we've had Don on, I think, 3 times. And he's always great, and he's always been supportive too. He gives us shouts out on his show.
He did,
that sort of thing. So
we want to get we want to get Eddie. So I guess I'm gonna start hounding Eddie about being on the show. I have about a 50-50 rating on him possibly doing it. So I don't know if he's even gonna respond, but. If you go back to like the earliest episodes, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even the first like dozen of them, like me and Dave, I think mostly Dave, it's like a different microphone every time.
It's me. Yeah.
And it sounds weird. It sounds different every time. You know, one of us will sound like this, and one of us will sound like, you know, it's.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of growing pains early on. We didn't know what the fuck to do. And before I stop blabbing here about it, the first time I was on How Did I Get Here, Johnny, your show, I don't think I knew what a podcast was. Oh, Johnny's going to interview. Johnny's going to do an interview with me, and it was a podcast, and I didn't know that I was officially going to be on a podcast.
Yeah,
yeah. I heard you were on pretty early, like in the first year of it, right?
Yeah, it probably would have been around the time me and my wife were engaged. So it was probably 2012. It's probably 2020, right when you started, 2011 or 2012.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what number I am.
If you guys don't mind, I'd love to. I was going to do this anyway, but ask you guys to be on my show as a team.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure, man.
Okay.
That'd be fantastic. That'd be a
But
lot of
not
fun.
Jared.
No Jared allowed, because he's,
You know, I had a beautiful Jared. You know, I actually had a beautiful Bobby Rock experience too 5 years ago.
You got to have Bobby on your show.
I thought I'd had him on. You know, I do 100%, and I've reached out to him since I started watching that. The very first episode of the Crew from Hell that I watched, there was this. It was just him. Like, it started off with just him saying hi to people, like walking through, like, there's all right, like doing his positive reinforcement to everyone.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, this is almost exactly like that scene in Goodfellas where Ray Liotta takes the girl on the date, and they have that really long shot where he walks through the back of the restaurant through the thing, like saying hi to everyone.
Yeah.
It was just like that to me. I was like, this is the coolest thing. And also it's such a testament to, like, everyone's face when they see Bobby is exactly what your face should be when you see Bobby. Like, all right. Bobby, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I love that dude.
The way he's like, "Sup, fellas?"
Yeah.
All right. You know.
All right.
This is how we do.
It's like it's like you imagine hanging out with like Bootsy Collins or something. Hey man, what's up? Hey man, what's happening? You know,
and
real.
Dude, like, real. Honestly, like being fascinated with Behind the Curtain. I mean, that show, the Metallica stage episode where they had it all taped off and they were practicing, dude, that was fucking amazing to me.
Totally. Yeah. I love the episode where they were in the rehearsal space, and by rehearsal space I mean an airplane hangar. And testing the pyro and stuff. The
pyro, that was fucking rad.
God, that was crazy. And when we had him on the show, I made a point.
We're nerds, dude.
Yeah. Oh well, you know, that's why we have a show.
Yeah, that's why we have a show. And I made the point when we had him on the show, when we had Bobby on the show, I made the point that, you know, all of us have been to a million rock concerts, but how many of us really know what it takes to put that on stage? Not many of us, you know, and especially at that level, that's like, it's dude. So
like loading into Madison Square Garden kind of stories where you're like,
man,
oh my God, how do you fucking do that?
Yeah, I was like, I applaud him for having this idea and doing it, because he's great at it and he's got no shortage of content, and he's doing it at the highest level you can imagine. This would be a totally different show if it was him loading in at, you know, Antone's or the Back Room or, you know, Emo's or something like that. But like you said, Madison Square Garden or the football stadium where the Detroit Lions play or whatever, that's a whole nother level, and people don't get to see that. So I think it's awesome.
The interesting thing about it is when you call the pack, you know, there's an order, and what cases need to go where and when is still the same dance, whether you're loading into Antone's, the Back Room, or Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Right. Case. These cases go on the stage. These cases do not. These cases go here, but not until I say so. Is exactly what's happening. I think Jeff Tweedy's gig is part of that. He doesn't push cases, but he's like, I'll take 1 through 4 right over here.
Right.
5 through 7 going to go center stage.
Right.
Yeah. It's a real dance. But Bobby's terminology, like the ballet of forklifts, or or whatever he said.
It's a dance. Yeah, he calls it a dance.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah.
Dude, the story about him, I love that we're like just recounting somebody else's story.
I know.
His ears are burning.
Well, that's what nerds we are. But my favorite was the Ian gig was the funniest one. Him just going around telling everyone that he was the guy, and then eventually he had the gig.
Right.
That was rad.
Oh yeah.
Well, he's got nothing to hide either, man, because you know he's so real.
Yeah. That's one of the things I do have to say that like, I don't know if it's us getting older or that we've all known each other for so long, because even though we don't see each other all the time, especially you, Jason, I feel like you're like a family member of mine. Like I feel very close to this community of people.
Yeah.
No matter how often I see people, you're still my cousin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
and
when I see you, I'm like, you know, you're like, fuck Jason. You know what I mean? Like, all right. Like, yeah,
man.
You know, that's a great feeling.
I mean, I feel the same way, and I see you even less, Johnny. I mean, I could probably count on one hand the number of times we've actually bumped into each other, but it's like talking to you today is like, you know, we just picked up like we were talking last week or something, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, Dave, because I've always wondered. I know there's some people that I approach very familiarly, like, because I just feel like I know you. Yeah. And some people don't like that. And so I've always wondered if you're always like, oh God, here he comes. You know what I mean? Like,
not at all. Not at all. I mean, you know, it's like Jason and I have said many times, you recognize your tribe, you know?
You do.
I can see you from across the room, and I know your backstory, and I know, okay, at the very least, without ever speaking a word to this guy, I know he's a music nerd. So we're halfway there. Yeah. And so the rest is like, okay, is he just a blatant jerk, or is he cool? Because I know we're already halfway there because we got the music thing in common. And
but I know what you mean, Johnny, because I feel like, and you know, and I'll drag Bobby into this too, and not everybody is this way. I feel like some of us more than others, and the four of us, Bobby and us three, are not afraid to really walk up to someone and go, "Dude, what's up? How's it going?" You know,
of course.
In some capacity, whether it's we're nerding out because we're a fan, or it's like, "Hey, you don't know me, but I met you, and you know some of the same people, and I just wanted to say hi." And we're not, like Bobby will say it, I'm not shy. Bobby says that he tells people, because I'm not shy is the reason I get to do the cool shit that I'm doing, because I'm a knucklehead and I'll just walk right into the flames.
Right.
And if it gets too hot, I'll exit, you know.
Yeah. I got to tell you guys, like 5 years ago, we played 2 different gigs. Skyrocket did. One was in Cleveland, and we had all gone to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before we had to go load in and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we were coming back in this van from back to our hotel from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there was a bus that looked like a tour bus. And I'm like, oh, fuck, a tour bus is there. I wonder who it is. And there's this guy just walking in circles, talking on the phone with the hoodie on and the hood on and stuff. And then he pulls the hoodie off, and it's Bobby. I jumped out of the van. I was like, yes! And then another time that same year, I was walking down, this is like 5 years ago. Jared, if you're watching this or listening, you will be listening to this. I hope you remember this, but I'm walking with Skyrocket's tech. We went to go get something to eat in downtown Pittsburgh, and we're walking back to our hotel. And as I'm walking, this guy's walking towards us, and I'm like, wow, Jared has a doppelganger in Pittsburgh. And the guy kept on getting closer. And like, as he passed, I was like, there's no way someone can look that much like Jared. So I turned around and I go, Jared. And he turns around and says, hey, it's so weird. So random walking by him in downtown Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So that's how rock and roll is, though.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things about it. Yeah.
We all stand out to each other.
Amen.
Johnny, man, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. Your story is amazing, dude. And I really do appreciate you spending so much time with us and letting us pick your brain and hear all your great stories. And we wish you continued success with your podcast and all of your musical endeavors, of course. And
thank you.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, you're
Juggling.
obviously, yeah.
Well, it's not like I have a full-time job and I have to do all this. Like they're just all little tiny. There's like I'm a guy that's like I'm like a patchwork quilt of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Well, there's
get
an
it.
art to that as well.
Yeah,
you know?
I get it, but
you gotta
it's still,
you gotta have enough
so
hustle.
so it is a full-time job doing what it, the juggling act that you're doing is the full-time
Right,
job.
that's the job. Yeah, making all those little things happen is the job. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot
man.
of
So
work, but
thank you so much.
I love. Thank you, man. And I look forward to having you guys on the show. I'll reach out to you. Maybe we can do it in like October or something.
Let's
Sounds
do
good
it.
to me.
Let's do it. Thanks
All
so
right.
much, man. It's been a pleasure. On behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Johnny Goudie on the Talk Louder podcast.